it gets hard to debug, right? Well, here we want to introduce the concept of something called a loop. A loop is what we refer to as a control structure. A control structure, right? So when you think of a loop, what kind of, does that conjure up any images in your head? No images?
A circle with an arrow.
Okay, yeah, good.
So it might look like a NASCAR or something, right?
So it goes round and around in the same direction, right? It's like NASCAR, left turn, or right turn, whatever perspective you're in, the same thing, right? So what we want to do here is the loop. We want to introduce the concept of a looping structure. If we want to do the same thing over and over and over again. And something that maybe one or two of the things inside the loop changes, right? So I could rewrite this using a loop. And we'll end here, but this is last. So Stata has it's got several looping concepts. But if I want to loop over strings, remember we talked the difference between strings and numerics, right? So I can do for values v. This v is going to be what I refer to as my macro variable. Right? So let's take a look at what I've written here. So I have for values v of varless sex through EC. Sex through EC. So this little hyphen here, Stata understands, because you've told it that it's a list of variables, it's a variable list, that you want to loop over or use some set of variables that begin with sex and ends with eye color. And then I also want to use FC. FC. Does that make sense? Okay. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of create my loop. Right? So I'm going to have a curly brace, an open curly brace to begin my loop, and a closing curly brace to end my loop. Begin of the loop, the end of the loop. So what I want to do here is I want to say, for example, I could have first written tab v.
And you have to put these on different lines of code.
Yes.
It won't work.
Yes. Yes. Tab v. So notice this here. This is not a single quote. This is like an accent. And then I end with a single quote. So this v is this v. Right? So the first thing it's going to do is it's going to go through my list of variables and go, okay, tabulate what is the first list, what is the first variable in my list, execute the tabulate command on the sex variable, output it. Then it goes back. Is my variable list exhausted? Have I gotten to FC yet? Nope. Go to the next variable. Execute this code for HC. Right, so it'll do it for all of those variables.
Do they have to be in a row though?
Well, if you want to use this hyphen, then yes. Otherwise, you have to list them out. Right?
And this is like what you did for the A1C
Yes.
dot underscore I command.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's exactly what I did.
Okay, so if you had like BP or something underscore multiple different things, you could just say BP underscore I,
Yep.
and it would encapsulate all of those.
Yes.
into two.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. But here I'm looping over a string.
Right.
Let's finish this concept first, because if I want to loop over a number 1 to 4,
Yeah.
I would write something different.
Okay.
Instead of for values, it's for each. Okay? Now, if I want to go back and do a crosstab, I make one change. That's it. And it's going to, if I rerun that code, it's going to do that crosstab for each of those variables. Now, if I want to do a chi-square, I just put comma chi, and it's going to go back and rerun these 3 lines of code, and it's going to do the chi-square test. instead of having to make those changes at every single point. And we see this all the time. He just received code.
Just received over 400 lines from literally within 20. It was the same thing. 95, 96, 97, 98. Compute 95.
Jennings,
Jennings,
right? Right. So this becomes really powerful, right? Now the other thing I might be able to, or I might want to do here is I might want to go hist v. So now I don't have to write space, do hard lines and do the table and then do this. So now it's just going to do the tables, the histogram, the tables, the histogram. So boom, 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 boom. Does that make sense to you guys? This is an incredibly powerful structure once you learn the concept of it. Okay. All right. So if I were to, I'm going to stop here.
For value is strictly for numbers
for
each.
Strings. Yeah.
Oh, for strings. Yeah. And for each we'll do if you have.
I'm sorry, the other way around. I wasn't listening. I'm sorry.
For each is if you have numbers or numbers and text.
Yeah, it's the other way around.
It's the other way around.
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening.
For values does both numbers and text, or just all numbers.
So I can write. If you look at my code, I wrote for values. You can go. We're just talking. So for values, I wrote down I equal 1 to 4.
Oh, I see.
So I is going to first take on the value of 1, and the next iteration of the loop, I is going to take on the value of 2. And then I think what I did was I did like hist, like BP underscore I. So do a histogram of BP value 1. Do a histogram of BP value 2, BP value 3. So, if I'm dealing with named variables or numeric variables, computers like numbers. Right? I drive Tom crazy when I do my programming, because I spend a lot of time writing my algorithm, squeezing every little bit of performance out of it. Or if you're going to write one piece of code and never use it again, it essentially makes no difference. But a lot of the code that I write, I try and squeeze every little performance because I use it over and over and over again. So the reason I'm talking about the differences here is because if you're going to write something and you're going to use it a lot, if it's numeric, code it as numeric. Computers like numbers. They don't like strings. They don't like alphanumeric characters.
So this is one of the few times that when you put that, whatever the line is at the end and press return, it does not finish the command.
Yes, because it's looking for the end.
And that end you put on line all by itself.
Yes. Yeah. Do you guys know about here's what we refer to as a delimiter. So we started talking about delimiters in data, right? Code also has the concept of delimiters. So we refer to lines of code as sentences, right? So in this case, the delimiter for these lines of code is a carriage return, the enter key, right? Let's say that you wanted to write one really long piece of code, and it took up a whole bunch of characters. It becomes hard to read. You got to scroll over on the edge of the page. You're like, what was I doing way over there? What you can do in Stata is do // and it knows that you haven't finished your sentence. You can go to the next line. And then when it finally when you hit the carriage return without the // then it says, okay, I know that's a sentence. Or what you can do is you can say $D, use a semicolon, and then you could A, B, C, P, D, Q, semicolon, and then it knows that this is one sentence because it ended with the semicolon. And then you can go back to $D, CR for carriage return. Right? These are little programming tricks you can pick up along the way.
If that confused you, just ignore it. I see a lot of faces like, what?
But the principle is the same, that whatever it is, it needs to be the last character on the first line.
Yeah.
So another thing I heard earlier too was like the spacing. The command, I forget the command we were doing before, the INV normal. That space, to a computer, a space is a delimiter.
Right.
The reason you guys were having issues is anytime you do a function call, when you're doing something and expect something back, that opening in parentheses is the exact same as the curly brace here. It expects that to be butted up right against the last character of whatever you're saying. Otherwise, it doesn't know what the word is. So that's, if you think of delimiters as that as well, when you do functions, the opening needs to be there. It needs to be part of it. You get as many spaces as you want after that, but that's where it needs to, it can't be delimited that way.
The I in the for values function, do you have to define that earlier, or it's just, okay,
For in a loop, it's instantiated in the for
in the for?
in the loop function.
But when we started, you actually had to do that before you started anything.
Okay.
And so I'm going to start throwing these constructs in my code more and more because I've seen it from the past cohort. 400 lines of the same thing, and they're like, now I have to make a change in 400 lines, and I'm like, I'm going to delete all of this and replace your 400 lines with 3 lines. That's it. Becomes much easier to read, much easier to maintain, much easier to change things. It's just much easier.
I'll show you guys if we have 2 seconds. I'll bring up. How do you put this on the screen?
Huh?
How do you put this?
Control F. The control's got to be on the right side.
Just to show you guys exactly what I got, which, again, pretty much have just been done in 1 line of code, or a couple lines of code. This is their example of long code, replacing this over and over again. This would have been one thing, this would have been another, this would have been what we call a list. So he could have had the same 3 or 4 lines, and this would have been right in like as a data set. And compared this is equal to setting this new value here, either 1, 2. Repeating the same information over and over again, adding them all together again. I mean, this is very inefficient code. He does it over and over and over again.
I see this all the time.
Yeah, this is where, and it will drive you insane. You'll get the wrong answer, and you'll be like, oh my God, where did I get it wrong at?
Try to debug this.
Yeah, this gets ridiculous, and this is a fairly small program. This is a little over 400 lines.
So,
That's when these things can be really useful.
okay. So hopefully tomorrow we'll finish up regression, start ANOVA.
Put it on that.
She said?
You too.
Nice.
Yes, the only thing that I can't